Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? Geoff Mosher here, Adam Caplan alongside me, and this is going to be a really interesting episode of Inside the Birds. Adam, I mentioned it last podcast. We're kind of inching closer to that training camp date of July 28th that the NFL put out there, but there's a lot of things that are going to happen before July 28th. We'll get into that in this episode. We'll also talk about the preseason. There's going to be some changes there, and maybe even more than what everybody else already knows. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that. I want to remind everybody, you got to catch our Inside the Birds NFC East tape preview or review. Really, it's last year with NFL Films' Greg Cosell. We went through the Giants, the Redskins, the Cowboys, the Eagles, all four teams. Fantastic tape review from Greg, who's the best at breaking down tape, and a lot of discussion about the Eagles wide receivers as well. So check out our latest ITB podcast, both on your podcast platform and on YouTube. And we've got an exciting announcement for ITB TV, Adam. You know, we just had Andrew Brandt, who I think we're going to talk about a lot of things in this podcast that he was alluding to with the difficulties of the season and COVID and everything. But we're also going to drop an ITV again on Thursday afternoonish with Brian Westbrook. So that should be a real fun time. We're getting into Miles Sanders.
Oh, perfect timing.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. We're going to talk about something you've brought up a lot, Adam, that Brian was a multidimensional, pure West Coast type of vintage halfback who was used a lot in the offense in a lot of different ways. And we're going to kind of get into with him how he was used, why he was used as much as he was used, and all that went into that, and then kind of relate that to how he thinks Miles Sanders will be used in this upcoming season. So that's going to be a great one.
Yeah, and Boston Scott, what he saw from Boston Scott last season, what it's like to prepare as a full-time starter. And right. I've always wanted to, Brian and I know each other, as you know, I know you know him as well. And I think I've talked to him about this before, but I don't remember what he said. But when I researched his numbers for fantasypoints.com, you know, I'd mentioned one season he led the NFL or second in the NFL in touches at 24-1 for one season. Brian Westbrook had 24 touches average per game. Can you imagine like, how could he do that? Like, how could he held up? So we'll look, and this is, by the way, if they don't sign Devontae Freeman, we're looking at huge touch numbers for Miles Sanders. Does Brian think he can hold up? I'm really looking forward to talking to Brian about that, and also the direction of the Eagles offense and everything that he had went through as a running back, and that's going to be fun.
Yeah, it'll be great, and that'll be on Inside the Birds TV, our YouTube channel. So check out Inside the Birds on YouTube, and please become a subscriber so you can get it whenever it's done. Also, you can hear our Football at 4 segments that we do on 97.3 ESPN in South Jersey, Monday through Friday, every day at 4 o'clock. You can also get those on our YouTube channel as well. And I want to tell everybody real quickly about something that you and I just started, and I think people are going to like. It's a kind of an addition to our website. It's called, it's going to be a weekly segment called The Buzz, where we take something that people are kind of talking about. We see it on our Facebook page, our community page, the Inside the Birds Facebook community page. And we see that people are talking about it, and then we want to weigh in on it a little bit.
Yeah.
And so we're using email to kind of do it. So you emailed me the topic. The latest one, the one we just posted on InsideTheBirds.com, is about the Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert contract situations, which we talked a little bit about on our last podcast, but then we turned it into a segment for the website. So you emailed me your thoughts on it. I emailed you a response. You emailed me, and then I emailed you. And then we took that email thread and put it on the website so that people can see how we felt about it successively there. So I think it's really fun, and I think the readers are going to really enjoy it. And we'll do that hopefully once a week.
Yeah. And in fact, what happened, the genesis of this, I did this, Scout.com is a company I worked for in the mid 2000s. And I put up some piece that got a lot of traffic. They told me it was exchanges with some of our writers. I'm like, wow, this is I don't know whose idea it was, but I just stole it. I'm like, this is a great idea. This is 15 years ago or something like that. But I loved it, and I haven't used it again. But I'm like, why aren't we doing this? Because what happened was we did that show, our ITB show that dropped last Monday morning. It covered the Eagles receivers and the rotation, what we see. You ought to listen to that. That's really interesting. But the part that got the most buzz Geoff, was our information and our thought process of Zach Ertz extending or not extending his contract, and what I'd said about George Kittle, and how Ertz is probably going to want to know what Kittle's getting if he gets his deal done. And how do you extend Ertz if you extend Ertz? It's very difficult for the Eagles to get through this.
Right.
And if you read our email exchange, I gave you additional thoughts we didn't talk about on that show, and so did Geoff. And I'm going to actually do a little bit. I have this information, so I'm going to go in the next day and add a couple of contract notes to that piece.
Oh, nice.
It's not going to be easy because, Geoff, that contract, the highest paid tight end in the NFL is Austin Hooper at $10.5 million.
Yeah, that's not going to last very long.
No, well, not only that, this is crazy. 8 years ago, you know what Rob Gronkowski's contract was? $10 million a year.
Oh my God.
Now it was 8 years, but to get that $10 million, Rosenhaus still got him $10 million a year.
Right. Well, that just shows you how slow the tight end market has been. Yeah.
And that's what's going to be hard for Jack Bekta, his agent, for George Kittle. You know, Jack, who I've known for years, he was actually Jermaine Mayberry's contract agent, if you remember, and Jack actually played at Texas A&I with Darryl Green. Jack is going to have, and Jack is right, you should try to get as much as you want. He wants him to be paid not just as a tight end. And I get that, but you just nailed it. The challenge is to get him obviously a lot more than $10.5 million, but the numbers aren't going up. They haven't gone up at tight end. Ertz's agent, Steve Carrick, got Hooper a great contract. He got more than I thought he'd get, quite frankly. And what I noted in our piece is that what probably helped him with leverage was the Niners are involved. They actually had interest in signing Hooper. They were involved pretty deep. So
that's amazing.
Right. So
a lot of money to commit to one position.
I know. I don't know how they could have done that. So that tells you that they might have reduced Kittle's role a little bit if they would have signed Hooper just in terms of a receiver. But Kittle's the best all-around tight end in football. It's not even debatable. He's a great player and a great guy, high character. Kyle Shanahan loves him. So just to sum us up, I've pegged the Kittle deal from 13 to 15 million. That's the range I felt since February. I'm not going to back off of it. Get 15. I mean, you're talking about $4.5 million a year more than Hooper got, who got a very good contract, considering that he's never been seen as he's never been seen as an all-round tight end. And what happened was he was an unrestricted free agent, so he had leverage. Anytime you get to the market, man, and you're a pretty good athlete at that position, you got leverage. But so for Ertz, to spin this back to the Eagles, Geoff, it's going to be fascinating to see if this deal gets done within the next few months, what he gets, because they're trying to do something. We talked about this in a previous show. How do you pay two tight ends? I just don't know how feasible it is.
I don't either. We'll see. And, as I mentioned in the piece on the Buzz, maybe you can figure out a way. The Eagles are like a lot of teams in that they have certain money that they're a lot to certain positions that they value, so that it all adds up in the end. But you don't have to be, you can be a little bit, flexible with that. And if you feel at wide receiver, you're not spending as much as you normally spend because you have young guys who are on rookie deals, which the Eagles hope to be by this time next year, right? Then maybe you can allot a little bit more for 1 or 2 years to tight end. But obviously that's stuff that Howie Roseman has to figure out and work out. And when it happens, we will address it. Right now, I really want to get into what this training camp and shortened preseason is going to look like and get into some of the news that you and I have learned. Very quickly, I want to remind people about our friends and sponsors, DraftKings. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook and Casino app right now and use that promo code ITB to get all of your sign-up bonuses. If you sign up and use ITB, you will get great bonuses. Trust me, I'm telling you. You got to be 21. If you got a gambling problem, you call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Adam, I feel a little bit, this happened to you a couple of weeks ago where you had info and you couldn't wait to, dish it on the podcast. And then 2 hours before somebody I had some info on the fact that I knew pretty concretely about the preseason, what it was going to be like, but now it's out there. I think Pro Football Talk had the report that preseason is going to be trimmed from 4 games to 2, and that it's game 1 and game 4 that are going to be the cuts there. So that came out today.
Yeah. And by the way, on that, a couple things have to happen here. First of all, the NFLPA has got to agree to this.
Right.
I know they've 6 to 8 weeks now they've been talking about this, and the challenge now is, Geoff, and as we get kind of in the weeds on this thing, is, man, you keep trimming time for coaches and executives and to evaluate players. In fact, remember Andrew Brandt did when we talked to him last week on ITV TV. He called it. He said that the league will pick at the edges. They'll trim the preseason. They might trim practice time. But the bottom line is they're going to have a season. They'll do everything they can, and I felt the same way. I've said this in every interview I've done in the last 2 months. The NFL's not giving back money to the networks if they can help it. And that's right. That's why they're more than happy to trim 2 games. And Geoff, as I put in my piece last week for InsideTheBirds.com, their coaches don't surprisingly, they don't seem to disagree with going out of 2 games from 4. So
yeah, well, I mean, I think we were headed in that direction anyway, prior to COVID even being a thing. I mean, we know that the NFL wanted to shorten the number of preseason games. We know, the coaches were fine with that. Everybody said maybe 3 and then eventually 2. So obviously this becomes kind of a good reason to expedite that process. And I find it interesting that they chose game 1 and game 4. And so the Eagles will not be playing the Jets for the first time in 25 years?
Yeah,
it's a really long time that they're not going to play the Jets.
That's right. So all right, go ahead.
Let's take this to a Philadelphia Eagles angle, because I want to share some information that I don't think is out there that I think is really important. Again, July 28th is that date that the NFL has said, we're going to start doing things. And then I think the 21st for rookies and selected veterans. But what I was told was that Eagles coaches and staff members are being asked to be in the Philadelphia area, Philadelphia, Jersey, in this area by July 10th. And if you think about that, we're recording this on the 1st. So July 1st. So that's really that's less than 2 weeks. It's 9 days away. And that would be 11 days before the rookies and selected vets are going to report, and 18 days before the veterans. And so they're going to report July 10th, or be in the area, I should say. And then they're going to have to undergo a mandatory 7-day quarantine and then be tested after those 7 days. So on July 10th, they arrive. July 17th is when the testing it proceeds for coaches and staff, which is, I think it's pretty interesting and kind of demonstrates what we've been saying about Jeffrey Lurie and his concerns about COVID and being on the forefront of it.
Yeah, wow. So what this means is that, and by the way, July 10th is a Friday. Where the show is on the 2nd on July 2nd, which is Thursday. So basically, at the end of the next week, coaches need to be in the area in their homes. A lot of them live in South Jersey. Some of the coaches I've run into in Philadelphia area, but they're going to be, and they have to get the testing. And remember, they have not been in their offices in 3-4 months, so they've got to get everything done, get caught up on some things. And I give Jeffrey Lurie credit in getting in front of this, man. That's look, you should be concerned, and we've mentioned this before when we've kind of gotten a little serious on this. The thing is out of control. The virus is out of control now around the country because certain states just refuse to accept that this is a real issue. And unfortunately now those governors are having to backtrack now, and they're now taking it seriously when it's unfortunately too late. Some people did not in general take it too seriously. They thought it was just a flu. It's not, obviously. There's no cure for it right now. We don't, until there's a vaccine, we're going to have to deal with this. So folks, please be safe. And I applaud Jeffrey Lurie for doing this. This is what a leader does. And Jeffrey, this is what I could say about Jeffrey Lurie. Being around him privately and knowing people work with him, probably one of the most supportive owners that I've ever heard people talk about, particularly coaches and front office people. Not only does he pay people well, he really does care about their families. And this is the way you treat your people. This is what, and let me give you one other nugget that I learned about not just the Eagles, but other coaches. Some coaches who just didn't buy into this thing, I'm going to say in March and around free agency, they are now so concerned about their family and their kids, about making sure they're not around a lot of people and really taking these protocols that the NFL has seriously. And by the way, give the NFL credit. They're really being serious about this. That's a good thing. That, I worry about older coaches, Geoff. You know, some of these guys, they don't take their fitness real seriously, and because they're grinders. They're grinders. Sometimes they don't take care of it. And some of the guys I've talked to privately are very concerned about getting something in their building. So kudos to Jeffrey Lurie for doing this.
Yeah, I mean, there are some, maybe in the NFL more than any other sport, although baseball could probably rival it. There are some coaches who are up there in ages. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Adam, isn't Tom Moore still an assistant with Bruce Arians or somewhere
I
in
saw him last summer. He might have been visiting. It's funny you mentioned that. I'm fairly certain I saw him in Tampa, but I don't know if he was coaching. He might have been visiting. Look, you remember Tommy Brazier. Tommy Brazier, how many times did he bring him out of retirement? I lost count. Probably 2 or 3 times.
at least twice, maybe 3.
He was definitely in his 70s when he brought him back, and maybe late 70s, 80 or around 80. Definitely late 70s when he brought him back the final time. So yeah, they're more susceptible because of their immune system is not what we are for younger people. And also people in tremendous physical shape have a better chance of beating it or not getting it so seriously. But the bottom line is, folks, take it seriously. This is one of the rare times I'm going to be serious about stuff. I just know, I mentioned how the agent Buddy Baker lost his parents, unfortunately, who were not super old. Buddy's a guy who's got Terry McLaurin and other really good players, and great guy, by the way, I've known for a long time, and I feel terrible for him. So please take this seriously, and I applaud the Eagles for doing this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think right now about Eagles coaches because obviously and staff, those are the first to arrive. I don't know if Tom Donahoe will be asked to come to the
Tom's got to be early 70s, I would think.
Yeah, he's a senior advisor, and he's normally there. But I reported a couple of pods ago that the scouting staff is not going to be there at the this year at the.
They won't be at all. Yeah, I actually talked. Yeah. I talked to people, and what I'd heard, Geoff, is what you had heard. I guess they're not. They will not be at. Well, they're not going to be because, as you know, they would typically come in for rookie camp to see what the rookies look like. Right. They will not, Geoff. Let me ask you a question. When are they going to be here? Are they going to come in next year? Like, when are they coming?
That's a great question. There's no answer as far as when they're going to be here. I just know that they were not going to be here for training camp, specifically the college scouting staff. Obviously, the personnel people who deal with pro personnel have to be there, but no, not the college.
So the last time, personnel. Geoff, right? Mm-hmm. Correct me if I'm wrong. The last time these guys were in the building, did they? Playoffs? Well, no, wait. Were they in the? They were there in February for their draft meetings, and then I don't think they've been back.
Yeah, no. Let's see, February they were at the combine.
Right.
They usually kind of go their ways and then come back for draft. I'm not
right
sure
for one meetings. Yeah, in April.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure they ever came back.
I don't think they did, man. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. As a matter of fact, you know how I know this? Because remember, the coaches around the National Football League were gone everywhere by mid-March. They were not back.
Right.
And the only and then the other teams I've talked to, we know that the Eagles coaches never return, but talking to the Raiders, the reason why they came back, Geoff, is they have a new building in Henderson, Nevada. They never been in there and they wanted to see it, so they were there. They were there last week, and that's it. But This is
boy. The more I think about it, Adam, we got back from the combine. The combine was a little later this year. I think it was the 8th or 9th that you probably got back. You came back a little later than I did.
Yeah.
So my kids stopped going to school on March 15th. So between the end of the combine and the beginning of kind of the shutdown, there was not a lot of time there. There may have been less than 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's a shame. Right. Not that it doesn't really impact scouting, but I know talking to scouts over the years, they love coming to the rookie minicamp and seeing these players. They just want to get a little look, and then they'll come in for training camp for about a week, and then they're not going to get that either. They're not coming in. So what you heard, I didn't hear that part. So you said, I didn't realize that they won't be. I guess it makes sense because I read the memo. I didn't realize what that meant. So that I guess that means that none of them are coming in. Yeah. The only thing I had heard was they were not going to be here for the rookie camp, probably not for training camp. But now for a fact that they're not. All right. Wow. It sucks.
Yeah. I mean, things always change, but the last I was told, the college scouting staff will not be there.
All right.
At training camp. Now let's talk about meetings, because a couple of weeks ago, you had heard, and I had said something that they were looking at taking the NovaCare complex and trying to make bigger rooms and make it so that these meetings can be socially distant. So I think that plan has now been scrapped, because from what I'm told, the team meetings that they have, which are every day after practice, are going to be held at the Linc, right? You heard Doug say that they were going to use the Linc, and I think a lot of people felt
Oh,
that
wow.
that meant practices.
Oh, I get it. You know why? Because it's so much more spread out.
Yeah, think about what you have in the bowels of the Linc, right? You've got
Yes. I've
two.
actually,
You've got the home locker room. You've got the away locker room. You have a Temple football locker room. I think you might have a Temple opponent locker room as well. So maybe 4.
Yeah, and that's actually the Temple media room is where Doug Peterson, I think, has his press conference, right? His post game, right?
Correct. So you have the
Right.
locker rooms, you have the media press conference rooms, which is not just Doug's, but also there's an opponent one too. So that's just 6 rooms right there. And apparently there are some other large unoccupied rooms that the Eagles are going to use to have their meetings. So what they're going to do is they're going to have their practice at the NovaCare during the day and then head over to the Linc for meetings where they can be socially distant.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting, man. Look, there's no doubt that they have bigger rooms. They have, as a matter of fact, if they really want to, because I've had speaking engagements there, the second level, the Linc, you've got the concourse and a lot. It's really spread out. I mean, it's incredibly spread out. So that's actually, look, you might as well do that. It's across the street, for goodness sake. That's actually a really good idea. I hadn't thought of that. That's pretty good. Good.
Right. Now here's something though that's really more pertinent that we got to get into and our listeners are going to find interesting. I had alluded to this already because I think it only makes sense, but now we know it's real. The first 2 weeks of training camp, I'm told, are going to be probably like walk-throughs for at least a week and maybe 2. All right. And so we talk about it all the time. Normally training camp, you start, you get a couple of ramp up days and then, 5 or 6 days in, the pads might come out or
third or fourth day. Yeah. There's a rule.
And the tempo. We're there. I mean, it's Doug, all coaches, they want to hit the ground running. They're in season preparation mode from day one. So if you're looking for great, juicy storylines and all these who's doing well and who's making great, that's going to be slow. They've got to do this whole acclimation process for the rookies, for the free agents, for the newcomers, everything's going to be a little bit different. And so training camp, and obviously that's going to have a carryover effect, right? I mean, if the first 2 weeks of camp are a little bit slower, then you're not getting into as much, material that you need to for the season until maybe week 3 or week 4. And I don't know, I made a joke that, we always kind of talk about tackling. Tackling seems pretty bad these days in September because they don't practice it a whole lot, not a lot of padded practice. You gotta have to wonder what the overall quality of NFL football is going to look like in September because every team has to face this issue.
Yeah. So in my piece for InsideTheBirds.com last week, that was what I wanted to ask. I asked a couple guys who work in 2011, 9 years ago, coming out of lockout, what was the football like? And the gist of what one personnel guy said was that the football was not good in the preseason or training camp. It wasn't until maybe 3rd or 4th week of September that it got the phrase that the guy said was, it didn't look like it should look like. So now think about this. Now then they didn't have an off season. And they couldn't have the playbooks, but they had 4 preseason games. We're right now, as we know, as far as we know right now, as we speak here, we're going to have just 2 preseason games, no off season, but they had a virtual off season, at least from learning a lot of classroom time, but it was online, more than you could ever have. And now spinning it forward here, Geoff, here's the thing. Now, what'll happen is, first week of what would be the preseason, you're not preparing to play a preseason game. You're just going to practices. So what a bunch of coaches told me the last week was that they were expecting this to happen, but they didn't know what those schedules would be like that week because this is something they haven't done before. So what they're hoping is, because they didn't have an off season, is get more practice time in. You can't have 2 days. As Geoff said, you're going to have walkthroughs. The way it works in training camp is you typically have 6 days you practice, 1 day off. And if you practice in the morning, you have a walkthrough in the afternoon, or if you have a walkthrough in the morning, you practice in the afternoon. That's just the way it is. But when I first started covering the league, man, when Andy Reid would have those 2 days, man, woo, that was fun. That was fun. They were long ass practices. Then the thing changed, and now we have the country club training camps.
Right. So I'm trying to piece this together in my head because in a normal year you would have about 2 weeks of training camp, right? maybe like 2.5 weeks before that first preseason game. So now that first preseason game is canceled, okay? But your first 2 weeks of training camp are very slow. So then by week 3, maybe you start to ramp it up a little bit, but that's also going to most likely be, if things stay the same, when your first preseason game is coming up. Now, it's hard to ramp up when you have preseason game coming up because, as you know, when you have a preseason game, you need a light practice the day before, and then you need a day off the day after. So do you see? You can see the challenge here.
Oh yeah. You lose
trying to really get your team ready in those key, critical 3rd, 4th, and 5th weeks of training camp when you've got games in there and you can't use as much time as you would normally because you have these days off and these light workouts.
Yeah, and this is an NFLPA issue, and NFL coming together collectively here and figuring out what the NFLPA is willing to accept with practice time. Mm-hmm. Look, the bottom line is players need practice time, especially the younger players, as we kind of move into this. And what I put in my piece last week is, this is a great quote from a position coach. He said, you cannot go 0 to 60 right away. You just can't. This is playing what Geoff just talked about from his source. Is that you probably like walk-throughs for a week or two? Was it the quote that the source gave you? That's right. Well, that's the point, because what happened at 11 from the guys I spoke with, there were some muscle strains, hamstring, groin, because they had no access to players. And Geoff, here's the problem. Mm-hmm. In this offseason, you talk to the players. You could find out if they're working out or not. You couldn't do that in 2011. You're not allowed to talk to them unless you cheated. And by the way, one of my last reports for FoxSports.com was there was an AFC team that cheated, that they gave playbooks to the team, and everyone thought it was the wing, and I'll never reveal it. And it was just funny. And I looked at my Twitter feed and laughing. Everyone's like 500 people said the Patriots. It was comical, but it's not. Look, of course, I get it. Look, I get it.
No, it wouldn't have been the Patriots. Because. Okay. Well, I have the benefit of hindsight here, but the team that gets docked the most for training camp violations has been the Ravens. They're the ones that have
Harbaugh.
Been, right. So I would have guessed that. But either way, I want to get into one more thing on this. Sure. The NFL is talking about maybe reducing training camp rosters, and I'm not sure I understand what purpose that would serve. I think they feel like less people, less chance of an outbreak.
Yes, that's my read on it. I think it's absurd. I think it's Geoff. And we talked about this before, but we might as well hit it again because it's even more important now. Because we're going to have to talk about this for the regular season, and it's a major story for the regular season. God forbid a team has an outbreak in training camp. Oh, and you want to move from 90 to 75? Are you out of your mind? Right. What are you doing? Like this is part of this show, and we might as well bring it up now, Geoff. It's bad enough that you're shortening training camp, you're shortening preseason, and I understand that. And I mentioned this on Twitter on Wednesday when it came out about the preseason games being cut. You're not going to hear about Corey Clement, a type of guy like Corey Clement anymore. There's zero chance the type of guy makes the team because you're not going to know about him. That is Corey Clement was on the bottom of your roster. This is terrible. This is. Elijah Holyfield, I've talked to the Eagles a lot about him. They really want to get a look at him. Forget it.
Yeah.
How do you evaluate
kind of
wonder
this guy? if they had to cut down from 90 to 80, who would be the first 10?
Yes, who do you get rid of?
I mean, and would it be like, I don't know if they would lean heavier on one position than another because of where they're at. It's funny because we've talked all year about this may be the one year more so than others where the Eagles really want to see these. They love this rookie free agent class. And could you imagine if they had to wipe away like 4 or 5 of them right off the bat?
Well, okay,
just because of a reduction,
right? So I could tell you from talking to them, this is the first year in a long time that they feel like the roster spots open. That there's going to be tremendous competition with younger players because they're getting younger. Well, here's the thing. So, for instance, Wanago will, they're not going to cut him even if they have to get down to 75. But I don't know how many reps he's going to get. The bottom of the end, the guys like Manasseh Bailey, who they're kind of intrigued by because he could run. He certainly is not going to be one of the 75 to be on there. Raekwon Williams, who they really want to push, Anthony Rush. I don't know that he'll be there. Dante Olson, who they what's that?
Yeah, You got Mike Warren and you got Dante
Right?
Olson and you got
This
Prince
is not
Smith.
good. I hope I need to get more information on this. I really hope the GMs don't go for this. This is a stupid idea.
Yeah.
Just figure it out that socially distance better. Give me a break.
Well, the funny thing is that, as you just said, they put a lot of thought and planning and effort into all of these protocols for health and safety and social distancing. And now we're talking about the Eagles using the Linc and bigger rooms. And you have a plan in place that is probably not going to be foolproof. No one's saying no one's going to get it, but
of course,
that is, you think, is giving you the best opportunity to get through this and have a season. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're like, well, maybe we should shorten this the roster. Well, it's like, wait a minute, what did you just put all this protocol in?
This is so restrictive, Geoff. And again, some of the coaches that were not really into in the masks and distancing, they get it. They totally get it now.
Mm-hmm.
But these are the same coaches who want to have 90 players on the roster because they want to take a look at younger players, but they also know with too fewer preseason games and a no offseason, it's just not going to happen. I feel bad for these agents who got really excited, that their late round picks and undrafted free agents were going to get a good look in training camp. Well, by the way, the Joe Osmans of the world, forget about it. And like they discovered this kid. I got to give them credit. I mean, every team I talked to rejected him. Not built right, built squatty. He's listed 6'2", but he's maybe 6 feet. He's a try-hard guy. He doesn't deserve to be in the NFL. And the Eagles, I don't know where they got the information, but they kicked ass on this kid before he tore his ACL. Kind of guy like that's not making it. You're not even going to look at him if you go to 75. What a dumb idea! Come on, I'm all for this, but come on, don't overdo it. This is Geoff nailed it. You're right. You have the great protocols in there. You're going to distance. You're going to make the locker rooms wider. And in terms of the Eagles, as you reported from your source, they're going to go to the Linc. The Eagles got this right. Okay, it's the league that needs to get a clue here. I'm all for Dr. Sills. I think does a great job, but this is ridiculous. Come on.
Yeah, and the only other thought that comes to my mind is if you have a rash of injuries, not even COVID related, just injuries, right? Or if you do have a COVID outbreak and you lose 4 or 5 guys, and you have to then replenish your roster, wouldn't you want to do that with guys who were in your camp? Now, you may have cut them going into the season, but at least they knew if they didn't make your practice squad, at least they were with you for a little while. Why would you want to eliminate your pool of players to get them ready for the season, or decrease them, I should say, not eliminate, instead of just keeping it as it is? So that's it. To me, I'm not sure where the idea was hatched, but it doesn't sound like a good one, and I agree. I hope it's not passed.
I just want to add this. One agent said to me when we were talking about this a week ago, he goes, what are you going to do? So if my guy is one of he was talking about 75. He thought it might be 80. But anyway, he goes, so what are you going to do? Put my guy up in an apartment and wait till someone gets hurt?
That's exactly my point.
I mean, like what? That's ridiculous. It's so fun. I got to tell you a quick story about Rasheed Bailey. You remember Rasheed Bailey who was with the Eagles? So I know Rasheed real well. And Chip Kelly told him to stay around, because Rasheed should have been his first time go around with the Eagles. They screwed up. He should have made the team. He made the team in terms of his performance. He led the Eagles in receiving that preseason. But Chip, I don't know why he cut him, and he said, we're going to sign you to the practice squad, stay around. Now Chip didn't tell the truth because that didn't happen. But that's
you had to have a spot for Jeff Mail. I mean,
oh God, from Oregon, or who's that tall dude from New Hampshire? David. What was his name?
Oh, I can see it, but
he's 6'4". David Ball, Dave Ball, right?
There you go.
Yeah, who hadn't played football in like 7 years or something. So,
all those Manscaped we've done. You'd think I'd remember a name like David Ball.
But anyway, so I digress. But no, I again, I'm not. I applaud the NFL for doing the right thing. But as Andrew Brandt said, if it was really about safety, they would not have games.
True.
I get it. They don't want to give money back, but they want to do the right thing by their players and their sponsors to try to have games. But this is going to be challenging, folks. I am, for all of us who cover the NFL and are great fans, our listeners, we got to have football. But man, I hope everybody's safe.
Definitely. I want to get back into the preseason, the shortened preseason a little more, and go through some points on that. First, I want to say thanks to our friends at PHL Sports Nation, continuing to enhance the fan experience with their coverage of all 4 Philly sports teams. They do it like nobody else. They are for the fan, by the fan. That's their motto. So make sure you check out all their great content and their podcasts. Go to phlsportsnation.com or find them on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. And we will pause right now for a word from our great sponsors. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer. Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today. If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too. All right, getting back to the preseason, Adam. One thing I've been trying to, I think I understand the idea. You eliminate the first game because teams are just trying to get themselves settled and get together. You eliminate the fourth game because you're not trying to have teams traveling and playing each other a week before the season or a week and a half, and then potentially get an outbreak, right? So then you've got it sandwiched between week 2 and week 3. And one thing I keep thinking of is like how that's going to be beneficial for the bottom roster. I mean, or are the starters going to play at all? I just feel like it's going to be a very difficult balance here for the coaches to really get everything going at the same time.
Yeah. So folks, the way it works is week 1 preseason, starters play up to a quarter or don't play at all. Week 2, starters usually play a quarter up to a half. Week 3, they play obviously into the second half or generally no less than a half. It just depends. Each coaching staff's different. Week 4, they don't play. So they're eliminating weeks 1 and weeks 4. Well, folks, weeks 1 or week 4 when the rookies play and the bottom half of the roster guys play, because those are the rosters spots that are really being competed for. Well, guess what? Now you eliminate that. And if the starters are going to play most of the snaps in weeks 2 and 3, Geoff just alluded to it. How the hell are you going to evaluate the bottom half of your roster? Well, I guess it's just practice. I don't know.
I wonder if this is the year where Doug says, you know what? Guys like Malik Jackson, Deshaun Jackson, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, and Darius Slay are not playing in the preseason whatsoever. I mean, that's tough because everybody, as you mentioned, the whole 0 to 60 thing, even with the offensive line, you like continuity, but I wonder if they just say it's not worth it this year. We need to evaluate the younger players, and we know what the veterans can do. We're trying to keep them healthy. I wonder if they just say no veterans in preseason.
I asked Danny Reed many years ago. God, it might be 04, 06. I don't remember, but I'll never forget this quote because it was. Do you remember the year that McNabb had one snap? He just went in for one snap. It was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I said, Coach, what's the thought process of playing guys in the preseason and not playing? And he goes, it's my job to get our players to the regular season in one piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what he meant. What's the point of putting a guy in for a play or a series? Would you rather? What if a guy tears his ACL? Do you want to regret that? No, don't play him.
Right.
And by the way, in recent years, Sean McVay doesn't play stars in the preseason. He just doesn't believe in it. And guess what? It's a pretty good choice. They don't need to play in the preseason. I love this quote that this coach gave me last week. He said he called the preseason NBA Summer League. It's really for the younger players. It's not for veterans. This coach has been in the league a long time. He said that he doesn't think the veterans need it. He goes, now, without the combined practices, which this coach absolutely loves, he'd mentioned to me over the years he loves them. It's a great way to evaluate yourself against other teams. You're not having that, but you're still going to have you're probably, without 2 preseason games, you're going to have more practice time in training camp because you're going to have those extra days. But the fact of the matter is, Geoff, it's just not good, and we're not going to know how not good it is or how bad it is, for lack of better grammar. We're not going to know until we get there. Based on history, it's not good. Dick Vermeil always said you don't get better without practicing, and that's true. But the NFL has gone through with this. For the coaches have, of not playing their starters a lot in the preseason. So we'll see what happens.
So when I did the math, if the third preseason game, which is now going to be the last preseason game as we sit here today, that's against the Patriots on August 27th, and then they won't play the Jets now. So, and the season starts on September 13th. So the time between the final preseason game against the Patriots on August 27th and the season opener on September 13th is 17 days. That's an eternity as far as preseason goes. So what I find interesting is that I feel like those 17 days where you're trying to prepare for the season, but also trying to figure out the bottom of those practices are going to be fairly intense. I feel like that's going to feel like what the first 2 weeks of training camp are usually like. But you have to hope your team isn't tired and exhausted by then at the same point.
That is where the Corey Clements of the world, the guys who come out of nowhere, and obviously he was a Super Bowl hero in 2017. That's where guys, this is their last push. They're not going to have the preseason action. They're not going to be able to get. Here's another thing. Agents will tell players, hey, don't worry about this team. This tape you're putting together is for other teams. So this is your audition for other teams. They're not going to have that because they're not going to get any playing time. Although something just as you were talking there, I just thought of this. Maybe the coaches take it and say, you know what? We're just going to play the starters in the first half. All the young kids play in the second half. Because again, the veterans don't need it. So maybe that's when those bottom half of the roster guys play. Who knows?
Yeah. So let's kind of spin this forward a little bit then. Because we've talked about some of the glaring holes that they would normally fill with veterans right now. Maybe that fourth or third DN, whatever you want to call it, the right guard veteran that they clearly need to compete with Matt Pryor and Herbig, maybe the running back that they've not gotten. And we've kind of felt now for a little while that, those are positions that you can also wait until cut down to address. But now, when the way you talk about preseason and really wanting people familiar with your system and your atmosphere in a short amount of time, do you feel like maybe the Eagles should look at right guard right now, especially, and say we need to bring somebody in and not just wait for a cut down date at the end of camp?
Yeah, I think it's I would say it's pertinent where the Eagles are now with no offseason and only 2 preseason games and just, I don't want to call it chaos, but just so much change. They've got to do something here with they probably need to take a look at Peters here, and we know that they have, but I think it's actually more important. Now, obviously, money is a factor here. Jason's looking for starters money, so we'll see what happens. But because he still thinks he could be a starter, and we'll see if they can get that done. But and you mentioned guard with Brooks down. I think you have to answer your question, Geoff. You have to do it. Why with this uncertainty and so many changes here? Better be safe than sorry. This roster is pretty interesting. They've gotten younger like they wanted to. They've added the team speed, and I know that they don't know how good these guys are going to be yet. I get it, and they didn't have an offseason. But on paper, in terms of what they wanted and they got it. And they have to see how the puzzle becomes together. The offseason is a total puzzle. You put it together and you set it down, and then the coaches coach them, and you see what you can get. But this team not only do they have a ton of upside on offense, their D-line could be special. But man, the right guard position right now, who backs up Sanders is an issue, which we need to add. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because if I'm Roseman, I'm gonna shore this stuff up. Why take any chances?
Well, here's why, right? And when it goes back to what we've talked about financially. You bring in Jason Peters, you still need a right guard because
Yep.
he's not playing right guard. So you bring in Jason Peters, he's not coming to play for $500,000. You're still going to have to play him, maybe not the 6 to 8 million that he was taking the last 2 years, but a couple million or whatever the minimum is for someone of his time. You still need a right guard, and if you want a decent right guard who's played in the NFL, not just Joe Schmo on the street, you may have to pay a little money on that too. And so, does Howie Roseman now want to start handing out millions when he knows in the back of his head that he needs as much money to carry over for next year's cap, especially if the cap goes down and they don't have as much? We've detailed this. They're already way over the cap next year. There are some moves they can make that don't make it as difficult for them. But nonetheless, if the cap were to go down, that just adds to his issues.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you laid it out very well. The only thing I would add is that you want to be safer here than, you want to be aggressive enough, because if they had a regular offseason, I think the chances would be better that Dillard would be the starter. Well, now he has no offseason. Mm-hmm. Yes, he's put weight on. We outlined that like 6 weeks ago, and I guess something else came out. He's kept his weight up, and I guess there's I didn't see who reported. I would credit them. I just didn't saw a headline, something like he's up to 330 or something. Great, that's fantastic. But but here's the problem, Geoff. You don't know how strong he is. That doesn't make him any stronger. It just means you put weight on. Well, we need to see that. Remember, we talked about, and Trey Thomas nailed it. We don't know about his technique. He's not getting that offseason work. This is why I would bring Jason Peters back. They could have Dillard for long as they want. They have him 4 years plus a 5th year option plus 2 tags. Not a big deal. We haven't really talked about that before, so let's put that out there. That's what they have.
I would say 2 tags is a big deal, but I understand what you're saying. They have
control. Exactly. Thank you. They have him under control, so they don't have to worry about it. I think sometimes, and I'm also part of this, and so are you. Sometimes we overreact. If you don't get that, what are you doing if you don't get that rookie in the second year? You're right, but this is a different story. This is something we've never been through in our lifetime. And coaches and executives. So you got to think that way. And you can't ask Sanders, as much as I love Miles Sanders, you just can't think Boston Scott is good enough to be his backup. I know Scott's been a great story for them. Shady, you don't need Shady to get, just get someone who could pass protect a third down occasionally for Sanders, who could give him 5 to 8, who could get 5 to 8 touches behind him. Devontae Freeman is a no sale. That ain't happening because he's not willing to take a reasonable contract. Now, if he changes his mind, is willing to sign for $1.5 million or $2 million, maybe that changes his mind. But he wants to be a starter. That ain't happening here. So, Geoff, to sum this up, I think you got to do it. Howie's very creative with Jake Rosenberg and Bryce Johnston. They're really good at what they do. This is their job. They'll figure it out. They've obviously been way in front. When Howie started learning from Joe Banner, he knows all the tricks. No, I know I'm told there's some tricks in the new CBA, which I need to research. Someone told me, and I need to find out what that means. But bottom line is, Geoff, this is something they've never been through before. I couldn't imagine trying to figure out this stuff if I'm them, but you know what? That's why they get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I keep thinking in my head, all right, if you could have Larry Warford, but it meant you're not going to afford Jason Peters, or you could have Jason Peters, but you're not going to get Larry Warford. What do you do? Because again, you can sign Jason Peters, but you don't have a definite guy to compete.
So you're saying, sum it up. If you can only have one, I want Peters. Yeah. As much as I'd like to have Warford, I'm not paying $6 to $7 million. Give me another journeyman. Warford's 29, but he's way better than a journeyman. But I'll take someone who's a lesser of talent. Mm-hmm. There's a term that coaches, offensive line coaches, have used with me for years. They all seem to say it. Oh, we could hide him inside. Like we could use this guy, and we could Wisniewski was a guy that the Eagles knew that he was limited because he's small, but if he was the weak link, they were okay with it. Every once in a while, he'd get overpowered because he's small. But that if you're going to have a weak link on your offensive line, it's going to be at guard. And obviously, Matt Pryor, by the way, we didn't mention Matt Pryor right now is their starting right guard. That's where they look at it. Right. And now the question is, do they bring in someone to compete against him? I would do it, but to answer your question, it's a great one. because you're right. They need to move a lot of money for next year. I'm going to sign Jason Peters. It's the blind side for right-handed quarterback like Wentz. I'm not taking any chances with my star quarterback. Jason wants it badly. You see he puts those videos out. One thing I want to add with his contract, let's say that he like $5 to $7 million this year. I'm not saying this. Folks who quote me, I'm not saying this is what he wants. I'm just giving a hypothetical number, just to be clear here, because sometimes people don't understand them being hypothetical with you. So what I would do is give him a contract with $3 million with the upside of $7 million. What's that mean? Per game roster bonuses. You also put in how many snaps he gets. So what you do is, Geoff, you give him, if he gets like Big V's contract, to get up to $10 million, he needs 80% play time over 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this case, I give Jason, I do the same thing. I give him 85% play time. I'll give him $2 million. You give him intervals. He's starting at 70%, and I'll get him close to what he wants, but he's gonna have to earn it. I'm just not gonna. Is he the best guy out there? Kelvin Beachum, by the way, still out there. He's a high character guy, former of the Jets. Look, he's not anywhere in Jason's class, but he's serviceable. But you got to do something here. You just can't. I don't blame. Obviously, you can't blame the Eagles for Brandon Brooks' injury. It is what it is. But if you don't have Peters back and you don't Brooks back, you're down 2 starters. That is not a good thing with that offensive line.
Well, we will see if some news comes sooner than expected. If people are reporting from the Eagles staff and coaching staff on July 10th, and that's really just 9 days away from the day of you and I recording this podcast, then maybe that will spur some action with Howie Roseman and his staff there, his personnel staff, and we'll start to get some answers pretty soon. I know that, Adam, you want to write another Ask ITB column for InsideTheBirds.com. So I'm telling everybody right now, if you got a question, put it on our Inside the Birds Facebook group page there, or go give us, please, a 5-star rating and review and ask your question on on the Apple platform if you're an Apple user. And Adam will probably have another Ask ITB column.
That'll go up
week.
Monday. Yeah, that'll go up Monday. And by the way, be safe for the weekend, folks. We're going away for July 4th.
Definitely.
I know that people are going to the beach, and this is crazy with what we're dealing with. Please distance. The states where the younger generation were going to bars and stuff, they're getting crushed in Arizona. California, unfortunately, now has regressed. People don't want to hear this. They're not happy. Well, you know what, folks? We take this stuff seriously. As much as I don't like wearing a mask when I go out, I'm happy to do it because it's going to not only protect me, it's going to protect you, which is the big thing.
And hopefully we'll get we'll be able to bring us our sports and keep them here.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, yes, I want to add something to that. Geoff and I are talking to some local vendors who are interested in us doing events with them. And, we're talking, obviously we have to go through the protocols and all that. We're not going to have them in Philly and because now they're, I guess they're going back to yellow phase, whatever I saw on Twitter. That's not good. They're regressing in the city of Philadelphia. We don't need that, folks. Take this stuff seriously so we all could go back to work and make more money. We all want to make money and support our families. So please take this seriously.
There you go. And if I may, I would like to just give a quick plug to the Phillies podcast that I do with Hunter Brody, our producer for this, and Frank Close. It's called the Powder Blue Podcast. We've been doing it for quite a while, but now that we've got baseball coming back, and I have fingers crossed, I think we just had a great episode. So everybody,
what'd you talk about?
Well, first we talked about the idea of how they can pull off their summer spring training, whatever you want to call it. We talked about the the rosters and what it means for guys like Alec Boehm and Spencer Howard and their ability to now contribute this season. We talked about Joe Girardi being a tactician and a strategizer and how that's going to help in this shortened season. And then we also gave our predictions of what we thought the batting order would look like versus right and left-handed pitching. So the Powder Blue Podcast, go check it out. We're available on every major podcast platform.
What is it on Twitter? What's the Twitter feed?
At Powder Blue Phils, I believe, is the Twitter handle.
Good. Very good.
All right. That is going to do it for Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. We thank our producer, Hunter Brody, recently homeowner and engaged Hunter Brody. So we say congratulations to him. check out his work on YouTube. It's Sports Talk with Broads. Check out his podcast called Processed. He does that with former Villanova basketball star Darrell Reynolds. And check out Hunter's work on Twitter at Broads81. So again, a big congratulations to Hunter on his engagement and his new home. All right, everybody, that'll do it. We always thank you for flying with us inside the bird.